Lovelies. I hope that all of you are doing amazing, and today I was being guided by spirit to talk about Arcturians. We the Arcturians don't talk as much of our truth. Now if you have noticed, there is a whole lot of information or Pleiadians channeling, talking in YouTube and maybe even other social platforms, social media platforms. However, there's not so many Arcturians that they speak their truth. Now the reason for it is some of us, we have been oppressed in the past, and for majority of us it has to do with our previous lifetimes that we have been oppressed. We couldn't speak our truth, or when we did, we got persecuted for it. Now today spirit was asking me to record this information or to speak that, so maybe some of you is going to resonate with it, or it's gonna help you in your journey. Okay, so these are some of the signs that I had experienced myself, and I'm going to share it with you. Now if you are from other starseed systems, it might also resonate with you, and that is fine. And this video might not resonate with everyone, so take what resonates and leave the rest. If it resonates, still continue listening, and if it's not, just leave it. Now what are these signs that I had experienced? Number one is sensitivity towards food. Now, when you were a child, you might have noticed that sometimes when you are eating a certain food, you might have had a really bad reaction to it. For instance, when I was a child, whenever I ate outside, either in restaurant or in other people's houses, if the energy of that house was not positive, or if it was not made with love, I would immediately get sick, or I would throw up, or it's just that the whole food experience for me was a nightmare. Okay, so now the reason for it, you might have been asking yourself that, okay, maybe you were just having issue with your stomach, maybe you just had a sensitive stomach, but that is not it. Because any other food that was made at home, or any other food that perhaps was made with love, could have been more accepted by your body. Now I tell you why your body was rejecting all of this food. Aside from this energetic rejection that was caused perhaps by bad thoughts or negative thoughts, I would say negative thoughts mostly, was because as an Arcturian, the way that we consume food was not the way that people on earth do it. So we used to have food in a way of energetic food. Okay, so the physical food for us is very difficult to digest, especially when we were kids. So you might have experienced that, and this is one of the signs that could be telling you that you possibly could be an Arcturian. Okay, now there are so many signs. Okay, there are so many signs, but today I'm going to talk about 10, so it might help you also in your journey. Now, one of the suggestions that Spirit is telling me is that make sure that the food that you're eating, either you make it yourself, or when you go to places, be mindful of where you are going or who you are even eating it with, okay? Because you also swallow all of these energetic food that maybe you think it's only a physical food, but it's actually you are eating that energy, okay, and you're putting it in your body. So it's very important that the places that you go, or even people that you're hanging out with, they have good intention towards you, or they not mean to harm you. Otherwise you are going to always have this stomach issues, okay, or you are always going to be sensitive towards certain food. Now it could be just any kind of food, and you might even have it at home and you might be okay, right? So that's number one. Number two, when you were a kid, you might have had these feelings of, not belonging to any certain group, or just not any group at all. When I was a kid, I felt that I don't belong to not only like, let's say, a group, but just not, I couldn't really relate to humans at all, if any, because the way that the humans were interacting for me was extremely strange. And for instance, if somebody would ask me where I'm from, or you know, like talking about culture and these things, it was very alien to me. I couldn't really grasp the idea of culture, the idea of groups. For instance, you know, there were so many groups in our school, and I couldn't really relate to any of them, because an Arcturian soul is someone who has a collective consciousness. So for us, it's really hard to be confined in a box where there's culture, where there's race, where there's all of that. So, you know, when someone would ask you, where are you from, I always had a difficulty, and I would just sometimes wanted to say, I'm not from here, I'm not from the earth. And sometimes even I would say I'm from another planet, and that would really puzzle people, or think that okay, this kid is I don't know, like this kid is just crazy. So anyways, this is one of the other signs that Spirit is telling me. Now, this is something that could be also in common with other starseed systems as well. And starseeds overall, they don't feel that they belong to. No matter how much we try, it just doesn't happen, because the way that the law or the things that happens on Earth is completely different from the from our star systems. Okay, now that was number 2. So not feeling of like you belong to any kind of a group or culture, that's something very, very strong. Now, number 3 is language. This is like really, really important part of being a starseed, because when you were born, you might have had difficulty learning the human language. Okay, so, and the reason for it is that as an Arcturian or starseeds in general, we don't have language the way that it is on Earth. So the way that we speak has always been via telepathy or via the mind. So this is how we used to speak, and when we are born here, it might be very strange, or we might have difficulty speaking or learning how to speak the language. And this is something that I struggled myself when I was a child, or when I was a kid, especially in school. I've been very, very slow in learning or understanding the alphabets, or even because for me it was all about feeling what other person is wants to say. You know, I could just feel, and for me that was the language. Whereas here on Earth, you need to use certain words in order to communicate with the other person. So definitely this is one of the other signs that the language could have been a barrier for you, especially in the early childhood. And this is something that I myself had experienced. And some you know, I was very lucky that I had teachers that they were so kind and very patient with me. Actually, my teacher in primary school, she was so nice, and God bless her soul, because she passed away, but she was very patient, and she taught me that, you know, I'm actually not perhaps someone that lack intelligence or anything like that. In fact, she told me that I'm quite intelligent, but it takes longer for me to learn the alphabets. Okay, so this is another thing is, and maybe even the reason for some of us that we are quite slow when it comes to language is we have that fear of being ridiculed. Okay, because it's just that the way that things works here is very strange to us, and we have a difficulty to learn the whole human language the way that it is, as in words, and also, you know, via sound, you know, because when you talk to another person is via making the words and, you know, the sound, which might not be very intuitive for Arcturians, because as I said, we communicate via mind and telepathy. Okay, so let's go to number 4. you might have had issue as an adult with intimacy or sex. Now the issue is that not that you cannot have, you could have not have sex, or you could have not maybe having intimacy with someone, but for some of us, having sex doesn't have any kind of a meaning unless if it is with someone from the same star system, or someone from the same let's say soul group as us. Okay, because Arcturians are very much connected to each other energetically. So maybe even you have had, you know, like let's say previous boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever, but if none of them are energetically aligned with yours, or they're not from the same, like let's say if they're not starseeds, or if they're not if they don't get you energetically, then you're pretty much stuck with not having a pleasurable sex, or you might not be enjoying intimacy at all, if any. It might just be nothing for you. You might be feeling like, what is wrong with you? Even for some of you, you might have been going to doctors or trying to see, and they couldn't find anything physically wrong with you. But this is one of the reasons that you might have not been able to enjoy sex the way that humans do, is that Arcturians don't have that kind of an intimacy the way that humans do. The way that we do is, again, energetically. So we Arcturians are very the way that we interact is completely different, and even with intimacy, it's very energetically. Okay, so it's not like, you know, a man or a woman, or I don't know, like you get together and there's like that kind of intimacy. And that's why for us it's easier for us to accept when someone is, you know, fall in love with the same gender, because we don't really judge, or we don't really have that sense of why this person is with the same sex, because for us it's about energy. Okay, so that's another thing is, and yeah, so let's get to number 5. You might be very good with technology, and this is not something that maybe all of you might resonate, but with majority of Arcturians, we are really good with technology. And as with myself, I've been doing everything that is related to my website, to creating it, to I don't know, to issues that it has arisen later on, to technical issues or whatever. I've been doing all of that myself, and I'm also very much into creating digital videos, or it just comes to me very easily, but I don't really have any training for it. Like, I haven't been trained for it, except that in university, yes, I studied some digital media, but they don't really teach you practical ways of, let's say, creating a video. It's just only very, very basic information, as I'm sure that a lot of you might have experienced that in university. And so when it comes to technology, it might come to you very easily, or it might just come to you really naturally. And also the way that it works is that you might just be wanting to do something that you don't know how to, and when you watch something like a tutorial or something really quickly, you might just get it just like that, and then start doing it for yourself. So you don't even need a whole lot of training before you understand how to do something when it comes to technology. It could be even creating a website. Maybe you just have a need of, I don't know, creating something for yourself, but it just comes to you very naturally. Like, let's say, learning how to do, I don't know, like even like learning HTML programming and things like that, which was something that I learned as basics in university, but it was only basics. They never teach you how to actually make a website. Now, so this is another thing. Now, remember that this technology doesn't have to be website. It could be anything, but in general, Arcturians are very good with technology, okay? With majority of them, not with all, but this is something that that I had experienced myself. Okay, now let's get to number, actually, what was that, number 5? I believe that that was number 5, so bear with me, guys, because I wrote down the points, but I'm actually talking spontaneously as just the information comes to me. Now, number 6, I believe, yes, it's number 6, is that at a very young age you might have had this feeling of you wanna there's something important that you need to do here on earth. This is something that it's not like anybody has been telling you, it's not like something that you have read anywhere. It's just that feeling of you are here to do something for humanity, or you're here to serve. Not exactly, maybe in early ages you might have not been getting it exactly as serving humanity, but maybe saving people, or maybe you had this urgent feeling of like you need to do something because the way that things has been working around you or here on earth might have felt very harsh, or might have felt very how to say, not aligned with your energy, and you always wanted to change it, okay, but you didn't know how to. Maybe you've been trying so hard to change other people or to help as many people as possible, which in return drained your energy. And that has happened to me because since I was a child, I could feel other people's feeling, and I had this urgent feeling of I need to help people. But whenever I get myself engaged with their issue, with their pain, or especially emotional pain, then you know, after I can come back home, I feel drained, or I feel that because the truth is that the way that we can heal others is that we exactly feel that person's pain, or it's like we become the other person, you know. This is how we experience it. And so a strong feeling of you want to save the world, you want to save humanity, and that's the reason for it. Is Arcturians are spiritual guardians of the galaxy. We are here at this time to protect the earth and also assist humanity, and that's why there's that urgent feeling of like I need to save the world. Okay, now this could also be you know, kind of resonate with other starseed systems like Pleiadians. Of course, every starseed they have their own mission. Okay, so yes, this could be kind of like in common with other starseed systems as well. Now, number 7 is that for a lot of Arcturians, we pick the most difficult lives. Like we might pick that we might be born in places where there's war, we might be born in places where there is oppression, we might be experiencing a lot of I don't know, abusive in the family, abusive in society, or being oppressed, or any kind of a strong challenge that you see out there in, you know, in this world. We Arcturians we volunteer to help it, we volunteer to heal it. So that's why you might have had a very difficult childhood, and even as an adult still struggling, okay, because we pick the most challenging lives. And the reason for it is that we Arcturians are the most you know, I don't want to say the most purest soul, but you know, this is what Spirit is telling me, is that our soul is so pure that it just feels for humanity, it just feels for perhaps other people's, we are very sensitive towards other people's pain, and that's why we are here, because we are able to transcend all of this pain into love, because the center of Arcturians is their heart. They are very heart-centered, and this is one of the things that you can recognize in yourself, that if you're someone who is very heart-centered, or someone who is very I would say an extreme empath, then you are definitely could be an Arcturian. Of course, you know, you could be from other star systems as well, but this is something that I know and I'm sharing. And perhaps later on I would do a pick a card reading, so maybe for some of you, you could maybe relate to other star systems as well. But because I because I resonate with Arcturians or Arcturian souls, that's why I'm talking about them. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, so we have two more. Oh my goodness, we have quite a bit to go, because there's actually more than 10 signs, but today I'm just gonna talk about 10. Number 8 is colors. You might be very sensitive to colors, so make sure that the colors that you pick for yourself when you're wearing is not dark, especially like black or darker tone colors might be draining your energy. And the reason for it is that Arcturians are very light beings. We are very much used to having a lot of light colors around us, and our auras are very bright. Okay, so, and it's interesting that the way people are portraying Arcturians is like they have this blue face with almond eyes, and the truth is that our face is actually not blue. It's just that Arcturians are very they don't have that kind of like a human form, so we are very much like a aura color. Okay, so maybe if someone has been seeing an actual Arcturian but not an incarnating the ones that are incarnated as humans, maybe they mistook it for a blue face, but it's actually their energetic field is pretty much purple or bluish. Okay, so maybe that's why they thought, okay, the face is blue, but it's actually not. And it's actually we don't really have that kind of like a an actual human form, even though it's very close to it, but it's not exactly like a human form. Okay, yes, there is some maybe some people, when they see an Arcturian, they could it might come to them as their face is blue, but it's actually their energetic aura is that color. It's bluish purplish, almost like a combination of blue and purple. Okay, and yes, because maybe for some of us that we are incarnated as humans, we are also pick bodies that are very much resonating with who we were at the time when we were actual Arcturians in our star system. Okay, so just a second, guys. Okay, now number 9 is that you have a very strong sense of hearing. Okay, so your sense of hearing could be really not normal, or it could be abnormal based on human standards, because like for me, as with me, I can hear even an insect walking, or I can hear anything from even really far away. And this could be one of the signs for some of you that you could be an Arcturian, because our sense of hearing is extremely strong. So you might be very sensitive towards sound, and places that are very crowded, or places that are very I don't know, like it's very sound heavy, like if there's traffic, or if there is like, you know, sound of the cars or things like that might really bother you. Or even if you are in a crowd and people are talking loud, that might bother you a lot, because you are just very, very sensitive to the sound. You can it's almost like it's amplified for you. Even if an insect is walking, you could hear it. So you could imagine, like if somebody is you know, if you are walking in the street and there's a whole lot of cars or things like that, it might bother you a lot. And this is something that's happening with me because I live in a city, and it's just not really, and I'm trying to leave this location because it's just really bothering me, the sound of the cars, or there's a whole lot of crowd, and I'm really trying to get away from it because energetically it drains me. So this is one of the thing, one of the other sign is. Now, last but not least, number 10. Okay, now this is perhaps I talked about it a little bit in the other numbers, but the way that things work here on Earth might sound very strange to you, or you might not be feeling like it's very natural. For instance, you might be feeling that you can move objects with your mind. And when I was a child, this is very interesting because I had this, sometimes I would just sit down and try to move an object with my mind, but it wasn't working, and I was surprised. I couldn't understand why I couldn't do that. And the reason for it is, as Arcturians, we had the ability to telekinesis, which means the ability to move objects with our mind. So the way that we did that was not via touching an object and, you know, relocating it, but via our mind. Like we would think or send that energy to that object and move it from one place to another. So this is a very, very strong sign that you could be an Arcturian, because telekinesis is something that we are just used to when we were in our star system, okay? But here on Earth, you might be surprised of why it doesn't work, or at least it might take you a whole lot of training to be able to do that. As I said, when I was a child, I tried so hard, but at that time I didn't have understanding of why do I believe that, why do I even believe I can do that, okay? Because you know, Arcturians, obviously they could or had the ability and still do, but it needs perhaps a whole lot of more training in order for us to get back to that ability, or perhaps reactivate that talent or gift. I wouldn't say it's a talent, because it was something that was very common. As an Arcturian, everyone could have done it, so it was not considered, like, let's say, as a gift, but it was more of an ability, just like humans can, I don't know, move objects with their hands and things like that. Okay, so I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I know that this is coming out of nowhere, but I was just being guided to talk about it. And there are, of course, other signs that perhaps I'm gonna talk about them later on. There are other signs, like, you know, for Arcturians, they don't have a very strong ego. Ego actually doesn't really have a place in an Arcturian soul. For us, it just doesn't exist. And, you know, when we are born, we just learn, because we are in surrounded by humans, and we learn what actually ego is, because for us it's very strange, or we just don't have, you know, that understanding of ego. So that's another thing is. And the other so these are like number 11 and 12, but I'm not going to talk in depth about them. Perhaps later on I will. And the other one is that you also have access to Akashic Records, and that doesn't mean that other star systems or other people, they don't have access to it, but for Arcturians it just comes more easily and more naturally. So are you an Arcturian, or do you feel resonate with it? If yes, then now perhaps this could be helping you to understand yourself better. We, the Arcturians, I'm sending you all so much love.